And welcome to another fabulous episode of Retrovaniacs. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Parmentier, here with Jeremy Gregory.
Hey, guys.
And Billy Holiday.
I'm here, and I'm ready to tackle this episode.
Yes, Billy has gotten a new microphone, so if it sounds a little different than normal, we'll work that out, hopefully by the end of this episode, but I think right now we sound pretty good. I also do want to say I'm sorry we've missed a week. I've tried to put this up every 2 weeks, but with the summer, as it is, you miss a week here and there, but now that Labor Day is passed, and I literally can go nowhere for the rest of time, we should have episodes every 2 weeks, hopefully, going forward. This week's game is finally... We've teased it before, then we changed our mind. We're going to cover Super Black Bass for the Super Nintendo, a game that I still can't wrap my head around. But before we get to that, let's talk about some things we did wrap our heads around. Jeremy, what have you played since last episode?
It's been a while since the last episode, but what I've been playing recently and has just got my attention almost 100% is Everybody's Golf for the PS4. And if you don't know what that is, if you've heard of Hot Shots Golf, that is Everybody's Golf. It was just always called Everybody's Golf in Japan. They changed the name to Hot Shots over here, but for this one, I guess they didn't bother. So now it's Everybody's Golf over here as well. And it is everything that I have been wanting that a golf game has not been since the last Hot Shots Golf, which has been a while ago. I think the last one I played was like on the PSP. And I love that game. I just played that game constantly. And this one kind of snuck out of nowhere. Really not much news about it or anything like that. And just grabbed it on the store. It's like $40. It's not a full price game or anything. Wasn't really expecting too much out of it. But, it's a golf game. I've been wanting to play a golf game for a while. I don't know why I love digital golf so much, but I do. And this has scratched that itch completely. It is definitely not a sim game. I've never been a big fan of sim golf games myself. But this kind of, it's not a complete arcade game or anything like that. It's not just like press a button, get a hole in one. You do have to use a lot of skill in this game, and it does have a pretty decent learning curve to it. But once you get it down, it's just so much fun. Just the way you progress in the game, it doesn't take very long to play 9 holes or 18 holes or anything like that. It's just a lot of fun. And I think that's something that's been missing from golf games for quite a while. Even back in the, I used to love the old Tiger Woods games back on the PS2. Like, those were so much fun. But it just seems like the fun went out of golf games for years. And thank God Hot Shots Golf is here to bring it back, because it's been so much fun, and I can't stop playing it.
Yeah, I've been listening to Jeremy talk about this one and watching some video. It looks like I'm gonna have to get into this one. It's like Jeremy said, golf games have dropped off. It seems like they've been so concerned about the sim aspect that the fun kind of, especially the last few years of the PGA games, the fun is sucked out of them. To get my golf fix, I've still been playing Mario Golf on the 3DS. So yeah, I'm highly looking forward to this one. I'm gonna have to give this one a try.
Yeah, I played the Hot Shots for the Vita. I think that was the last Hot Shots.
Oh, okay, yes, the
which
Vita
is good.
one.
Now, does this have online multiplayer?
Yes, totally. And actually, it's incredibly insane. The online multiplayer is actually like an open world style course. I mean, all these courses, when you play them in single player, they're completely open. It's just one big golf course, basically. Mm-hmm. But you're not really able to run around in them. In the multiplayer, you can actually just run around the damn course. You can play whatever hole you want. You can, play 9 holes. You can go over to hole number 5 and just be like, I'm just going to play this hole. You can ride a golf cart around, goddamn fish if you want to, which, work this into this episode. You can actually, I believe it's once you get past rank 4, you will be given the ability to fish in the ponds in the various golf courses. I haven't got that far yet myself. I'm up to rank 3 now, I believe, but It's a really weird game, and I can only, once you get in there with a whole group of people on one of those public courses where everybody can just kind of run around and just kind of do whatever the hell they want. It's a really strange experience for a golf game. But if you're not looking for that, there's also, you could just play 2-on-2 with some friends, or 4-on-4, whatever. That option is there as well. But it does some really neat stuff with multiplayer that I've not seen in a golf game before.
Now, you said you can ride a golf cart. Does that mean you can drive into other people's games and ruin them?
You cannot. Once I haven't really messed with it too much, but it seems like once you actually commit to a hole, to actually playing the hole, then it kind of zones everyone else out.
Okay, well,
but then
that's
once
good.
you're done playing the hole, then everyone else kind of comes back in.
I was like, I imagine if that was the case, no one would be playing it online after about a week. Like, I'm done with this. It's just 100 people in golf carts. I can't get a damn thing done.
It'd just be pure chaos. But yeah, I mean, it's still fun for what it is. And, for $40, you can't go wrong. The only thing I can say against it is there's just not many courses in it. I think there's only 5 with 2 DLC courses that you can download for like $5 a piece. But, that's really about the only thing I can say against it.
Well, I don't need another game right now. I've been on a buying spree again because I'm a fool. I have no money to do this, so I'm not really sure why I keep doing it. And thankfully, most of the games I bought on impulse are fairly cheap. Not sales, though. I'm going back now and finding older games that, for whatever reason, I haven't played. Like I hunted down a copy of, and it's not a hard hunt. I went to GameSpot. But I got a copy of the Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns because I never played that because I'm going through all of those games still. And I bought Hey Pikmin, which is actually really, really fun. A little easy to just get through the levels. Very easy. The first, it's broken out in worlds, kind of. And the first 3 worlds, every level you're only given 1 color Pikmin. So the puzzles at first seem really basic. If you only get red Pikmin, then it's very clear that you're only going to be dealing with fire or, the few things that red Pikmin are really good at. And then when you finally get to the level of the yellow Pikmin, well, it's only yellow Pikmin. So all of a sudden there's electricity everywhere. I mean, it teaches you, like the other Pikmin games, what the different Pikmin colors do, but it doesn't mix them together until fairly late in the game. And then it does get a little more interesting. But it's easy, but I love Pikmin, and a lot of the complaints I read online were that it was too easy and not Pikmin-like enough, but I think it actually feels a lot like a Pikmin game. It's just kind of like baby's first Pikmin, but it's still well worth playing in my opinion. And I spent a lot of time on vacation at the beach after the kids went to sleep, where I couldn't do anything fun, playing a lot of Pikmin. So that was a good pickup. And again, I'm still working on Final Fantasy 13. But Billy, what have you been playing since last time?
Well, last episode I was going through a weird phase, and I was playing games left and right. Nothing was catching me. I picked up that Hellblade, that Senua's Sacrifice, and I can't say it's one of the first times I sat down with a game, and just over the course of, it's 8 to 10 hours over the course of a few days, and I finished it up. And I don't finish a lot of games nowadays. Just an excellent game. I can't say enough, and I think even Jeremy picked it up and can attest to the fucking sound design in this game is outstanding.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if you're going to get that game, get you a pair of headphones. I really hate those people that's always just like, oh, you need a pair of headphones to really enjoy the sound. But, this is you. If you could sell me on that idea, this would be that game. I mean, it's actually part of the game that she's hearing all these voices. So it kind of makes sense to have headphones on.
Yeah, it's a must. It greatly improves the whole experience. And it's a nice looking game. It's light on. There's a lot of walking. I told Jeremy before it's about a 4th walking simulator. A little bit of fighting in it, some puzzles. But just a really enjoyable game. And it's not full price either. I think it was 25, somewhere around there. Just right price-wise. But after that, what got hold of me was, and I was on the fence for this one for a while, that Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, the remake of 4. And I sat on it and I thought about it for a while because a lot of first-person shooters are coming, including the new Call of Duty, Destiny 2, which will probably take up every bit of my time. But I had to pick this one up. I fondly recall Call of Duty 4. I played that thing hours on end, mainly because I was in a depression. I was living in Michigan, which would explain the depression. But yeah, it's just like the original Duty 4. They've added a few things to it. But it's stuff if it's different modes and whatnot. So if you don't like them, you can ignore them. The classic game is there, pretty much unchanged, and I think the changes that are in it are a positive. But yeah, it's just good to sit down with a Call of Duty game, listen to fucking preteens whine, curse, fucking wish death upon you. It's just as awful as that sounds. That has always been what has kept me playing the Call of Duty series.
It's part of the charm.
Those shitty kids.
Now, is there any fishing in that game?
No. Somehow there is not. But they're promising, they're going to keep adding to it. So maybe it's only a matter of time.
Well, let's dive in, huh? How about that? Dive into this week's game.
Man.
Oh, boy. Thankfully, I'm not going to do that. Super Black Bass for the Super Nintendo. Now, Billy, this was your pick, and I have to know, how did you play this a bunch as a kid? How is this possible?
This one, this game has a special spot in my heart. And I think I had mentioned back when we first teased this show that there was a story surrounding this. This game I enjoy partly because it reminds me of my late uncle, a man that never had any sort of regard for authority or for the law or anything like that. And my cousin and I would go over to this uncle's house most weekends. We'd spend most of the summer there. One of us would bring a console. I had a Super Nintendo. My cousin had a Genesis. We'd go to the video store, rent something, and we'd spend our weekend there playing whatever that was. My uncle didn't pay much notice until he came up to us one weekend. He said, "Do you have that game you played last week? That cowboy game?" It turns out he was watching us play Sunset Riders, and he became enthralled with it as a fan of Westerns. We told him, no, we did not. And it wasn't but maybe a day or two later, he informed us he had purchased his own Super Nintendo. He had purchased Sunset Riders, but had quickly taken it back because, in his words, he was no good at it. His entire library, for the entire time he had the console, was Side Pocket, Vegas Stakes, and the game we're going to be talking about here is Super Black Bass. Even though he never outright purchased this game, he rented it from Blockbuster one time and renewed it again, and continued to do this for about 4 or 5 months. Just kept renewing this game, spending who knows how much in the process, until one day he didn't renew it. And the weeks had gone by, and they started to call. And he told them that pretty much he had paid enough in rental fees that he could have owned the game by now. So he was going to keep it. It was now his. He had paid enough for it, and he was holding on to it. I don't know if he thought this was a rent to own. No, this is pure rental. But he refused. There were threats made towards every employee that called, offers made to come to his property to take it from him. There was threats of the authorities being called, and I was not there to see any police officers show up. I would assume when a young Blockbuster employee told them what was going on, they would kind of disregard that as not worth their time. But this kept going. This went on, the phone calls. Most weekends I was there would be at least one. And we're talking about a matter of months. He held on to this game and still held on to it. That Blockbuster shut down before they ever got that Super Black Bass back from him. But yeah, that was so if you were over at his house, eventually we had to start bringing our own TV. As we wanted to play a video game, it had to be Super Black Bass. He would keep a tally on a little notepad by the television of catches in the game. We would constantly be challenged to beat those, and it was serious business. Super black bass. He really got into it. He was an avid fisherman in real life also, and I think this cut out his real life fishing. This game, it did something to him, and I can see why, because I still think this is just a strong fishing title as we'll go along. I know some of us haven't had that much luck with it, but yeah, that's pretty much it. When I think of Super Black Bass, I think of my uncle taking a stand for the common man and refusing to do what was right and returning that game.
I think the long game wise, your uncle probably won because all those stores have closed, and I'm going to blame him. So that's a win for him.
Yeah. Blockbuster died before he did. He won that one out. He won that one out.
So, Jeremy, have you played this before, this podcast?
Yeah, actually, I did. It was one of those, I think it was during the summer, and I rolled into my video store, and you know, it was one of those days, just there wasn't anything in there to rent, and I didn't really want to rent, you know, the ones I'd rented over and over again, like Turtles in Time and stuff like that, and I saw Super Black Bass, and I don't know what got to me. I don't know. To this day, I still don't really remember why I rented it, but I did, and I had an enjoyable experience with it. Of all the things that I never thought, or that I just figured I would hate, it was probably Super Black Bass. And I don't. It might have been like I rented it just to challenge myself, to be like, all right, we're going to see if we can deal with this game. And I really liked it. I sat down there with my cousin for several days that I had it, and we just had a blast rolling around in our stupid little boat on the lake, trying to catch these fish. It was very challenging, as I'm sure some of us know. It is not an easy game. It's definitely like a simulation fishing game. Mm-hmm. Not an arcade game or a mini fishing game that you'd find in other bigger games. This actually tasked you with choosing the correct lures, choosing the correct color lures, the correct parts, the locations on the lake where you could find a fish at different times of the day. If it was cloudy, if it was sunny, you had to actually know what you were doing to catch a fish. And I can see why Billy's uncle would enjoy this game if you are a fisherman, because you would already know what you're doing. But put this game in front of someone that's not very good at fishing and all these options, and you probably don't know what the hell you're doing.
This is it's surprisingly in depth, and that's one thing you had. This is another one where you need that instruction manual. You need it's hard just going straight in. I think Jeremy P may be able to attest to that. It's hard just jumping straight into this one, because it's almost to the point where you need to come into it with a little bit of fishing knowledge.
So, not only, as a child, I hated fishing. My grandfather used to take us out to a lake that he had on his property, but he stocked it with fish. So you'd go out there and you literally would just put your pole in the water and you'd catch a fish. So when I actually had to go real fishing when I was slightly older, I thought, this is long and boring and terrible. Now I like real fishing because I just like sitting in a boat with some beer, with no children, being left alone. It sounds wonderful. So I thought, okay, I'm going to like this game. Now, I would not have liked it as a kid because it is a lot of tedious steps to get to the point where you're doing what you would assume is part of a fishing game, which is the actual fishing. I'm not joking here. I've played this game for probably 5 hours for this podcast, which doesn't seem like much. But in 5 hours of time, I have not caught one fish. Now, I've seen fish. For the first 3 hours, I hadn't even seen a fish, other than the one on the loading screen when you first pop it in, the title screen. Other than that, I've seen no fish. And I thought, I must just be, like, do I have it set on expert? Like, is it the default that it's way too hard? There is no, I mean, again, I'm not playing this on the cart. I'm not going to hunt down a copy of Super Black Bass for the purpose of a podcast, so I might be playing this via emulation. I could not find a copy of the manual anyplace. And normally, especially if it's a game we've never played, I've never played, I like to at least look at the manual because, you know, for the time frame we're looking at, there's a lot of games you need that manual to have a grip on what you're doing. But I couldn't find a scan of the manual anywhere. I went to look for like a detailed FAQ, and the detailed FAQ is probably outstanding, but it assumes that you're not so dumb you can't catch a fish. So it assumes you have the basics down. So it tells me all the different lures and what they do and where the right spots to go at different times of day. That's all wonderful. I cannot catch a fish. I can get a fish to catch the line, but the process of reeling it in has never been successful. And I just got very, very frustrated. But at the same time, I was like, I'm determined to learn this game because in theory, I should like this game. I love any game that has fishing in it. Final Fantasy 15. I fished for hours in Final Fantasy 15. I've wasted months of my life fishing in World of Warcraft, which is not even a fishing game. It's literally a button press and waiting game. But I played it for. I used to get up every Sunday and do that stupid ass fishing tournament. I wasted months of my life fishing in video games, and yet the game that's supposed to be specifically fishing, positively just the most frustrating gaming experience I've had in hands down on this podcast, but probably in any gaming experience of my entire life. And I have to understand what I'm doing wrong. So, before the podcast, Jeremy kind of said, I don't know what we can do to talk about this game for more than 5 minutes. We're going to go through each step because I really, really, really don't get it.
And Jeremy is going to have to be the one to do this because I think it's committed just a muscle memory. For me, it's I don't know. I was so frustrated because I could not explain to Jeremy P. the process involved. I'm baffled as to why I thought that he couldn't get one to bite. This entire time, I thought you couldn't get one to bite. I didn't know you were getting a bite. You didn't know how to reel them in.
Well, again, for the first 3 hours, you're right. The first 3 hours, I wasn't even getting a bite. I was getting nothing.
Okay.
I wasn't seeing a fish. Like, I kept doing what I thought. I was like, I'll just fish here and then whatever. But then eventually, after about 3 hours, when I saw, oh, wow, when you cast in the right spot, you can actually see the shadows of fish. I was like, I've wasted hours fishing at nothing. I literally was just throwing water, a fishing hook in a bathtub, and I'm not catching any fish. This is absolutely awful. So the game itself is set up as a series of tournaments. It's 4 tournaments, and the idea is you can catch, I think it's 5 bass in each tournament. This is according to the online strategy guide. Since I had not catch any fish, this could be wrong. So let me know when I'm wrong, guys. You catch 5 fish in the tournament. You can pick the 5 you save or whatever, and that's what you input in the tournament. It is 1 day for each tournament. You can you see that the time go by, different times of the day, different fish are in different spots. You have to use deeper and lighter lures. It's very involved, like both Jeremy and Billy said. But the very basics of even how to get started. I mean, the first fishing tournament you do is like the Podunk Town amateur fishing tournament for kids, and I couldn't even figure that out. You start the tournament, you have to take your boat from the docks, and you're basically moving your boat around the overhead map, and you have a scanner that, from what I can tell, is just there to make you as angry as possible because it makes no sense whatsoever. What does that scanner even do?
It's supposed to show if there are any fish around and what depth. It's a depth reader, what you'd find in a boat, a fishing boat or whatever. And any sort of like small dots, that's supposed to show that there is a fish and how deep it is to the surface of the water. And at that point, there should be a fish around when you go into actual fishing mode and cast your lure. But it's not always guaranteed because that's not 100% if you'll see a fish when you throw out your lure. It's just like that fish is somewhere in the vicinity of your boat, and depending on where you cast your lure, you may or may not see it. The best strategy is to get to places. The fish will always gather in certain places of the lake during certain times of the day. And this is definitely one of those things that you would have to kind of know beforehand as a fisherman, how to find these kinds of fish, because early in the day, you can go to the where all like the reeds and moss and stuff is, and usually they're kind of just huddled around those areas, sometimes over by the dam. Mm-hmm. And during the later parts of the day, when it starts to get hot, the fish will get deeper and towards like the more center of the lake. So it's just kind of a matter of knowing where they are and where to hunt for them. And what you do, then you can usually find a decent group of fish. And once you find the fish, then it's a whole nother thing of knowing which lure you should use, which color lure you should use, depending on if it's cloudy, if it's sunny. Mm-hmm. The fish need to see the lure. So if it is a cloudy day, you need to use a very bright lure. for them to see it. It depends on how you reel, what kind of lure you use and how you reel it in can also affect how a fish sees it. It also depends on if it's a heavy lure, the lure will sink down. Going back to, the depth, seeing the fish on the depth chart, if they're low to the bottom of the lake, you would need something that can sink down. And you have to actually let your lure, hold it for a second so it can sink to the bottom of the lake. So, and again, the game doesn't really tell you that. So there's just a lot of things that you have to kind of know beforehand, just being, a fisherman. I used to go a lot as a kid, so I knew these things a little bit here and there. Also, when I rented the game, this was the only time my grandpa ever gave me good gaming advice. He came in and watched us play. And he was saying, oh, you need to do this, with this fish. He actually knew what the hell he was doing. And his advice actually helped us. So that can actually attest to just how much this is like real life fishing, even like on a Super Nintendo. Just there's so many things that how you fish in real life that actually translates into this game and how to successfully catch a fish.
Yeah. And that's how my uncle, who had up to that point I don't even think he dabbled in Atari or any video games at all, was able to pick this one up and be pretty damn good at it. Because, like Jeremy said, I too can attest to just how accurate this is in terms of the lures when it comes to the weather, the time of day, the movement of the lures. It's pretty amazing. Back Super Nintendo time, you weren't getting a lot of very sim-like sports games. This fishing game a little bit ahead of its time. And another thing Jeremy P would have missed out on, because you had to do that whole catching a fish thing. There's a level system to this. I think your fisherman has a couple of attributes. I believe it's strength and, correct me if I'm wrong, technique, I think, are the two. And I don't know quite how often they fill up. It seems like after I caught, a few fish here and there, they would level up a bit. But that makes it a little easier for you as you progress along, and you need it too, because you're going to tackle some heavier fish in the future tournaments.
Yeah, at the beginning of the game, because if you are a lower level and you actually get a large fish hooked, you won't be able to reel it in because it's too much for you.
Yeah.
That is something you actually have to level up, and I believe it's every two bass or something that you catch, you'll level up or something. I can't remember exactly what it is.
And if I recall, I think strength it enables you to pull in those bigger fish, and I think technique it just makes it easier for you to hook them to begin with.
Okay.
This is crazy. Aside from
you thought this was going to be child's play this episode, didn't you?
No, I mean, you guys are talking about a totally different game than I played, apparently. I mean, I think we're talking about the same game. It's not like this time I accidentally picked a different fishing game that I've been playing for 3 or 6 hours or whatever. This is mind-blowing. For the first where I didn't even see a fish, I didn't know you could change lures until way later, because I finally started seeing fish and could figure it out. So that back to that scanner thing, I would drive along the boat, on the overhead map, and the scanner would just kind of show me the depth of the water, but I never saw any fish, ever. I never saw anything that looked like a dot. I never saw anything that wasn't just, here's how deep the water is. Until I looked online and found, like, hey, in this first lake, go to this area early in the day to find this fish. I finally did that, and even then, I guess I was off by a couple inches or whatever on the map, because I still didn't see the fish until later. How would anyone have figured this out? I mean, is it really just that if I had fished my entire life, these things would be obvious, and therefore I'm just an idiot because it's a sim as opposed to an arcade fishing game where you're guaranteed to catch a fish? I've never been so lost playing a video game. Where I was like,
it helps, but I don't think it's gonna, it's not gonna make you a total ace at the game as soon as you start. But there's a lot of common sense stuff that you would know to pick up on if you've actually fished in real life, and then start the game. You could be like, it's kind of the same thing of like, if you play or like baseball or basketball in real life, and you pick up a game, there's things you automatically know. That going in that the game probably doesn't try to explain, because it's figuring that the people that play this automatically know about basketball and baseball. And this game's no difference. I mean, it when you turn this game on, it looks very simple. It is a very simple looking Super Nintendo game. It is an overhead map. Just kind of looks, nothing special. And when you cast your lure, it goes into like a mode 7 casting thing, which doesn't look very good at all. And then it's back to being an overhead kind of thing when you reel your lure in at a close up of the lake. I mean, it is a very, very simple looking game, but there is a lot of stuff going on underneath the hood that if you just don't really know about fishing, you're probably not going to know to look for it.
That must be because I'd say that's the same issue I have with any sports game. I mean, I know, like, I'm a big football guy. I'm a big NFL guy. I've yet to enjoy a Madden game because it's just too many little details, too many things I don't have patience for. It's not a hard game to get started on, but I'm just like, yeah, okay, there's too many. You got to do stats. You can make a team. All these things too involved for me. Give me NFL Blitz. I guess that's my problem with this game as well. I need the NFL Blitz of fishing because this game has too many moving parts. The lures, for example, we brought up how once you get to the overhead, the part where you cast your hook, you can change your lure around, and as you're pulling the lure in, depending on which one you pick, and it doesn't say on the screen what each one does. You have to have the manual, I guess. But some of them will immediately sink if you don't touch them. Others will float on the surface if you don't touch them, and only sink a little bit when you reel them in. Again, I understand the concept there. I have been fishing. I just don't get like, how would you know which one to use on each fish unless that's also something you just kind of figure out maybe in the manual or maybe from fishing, just knowing, oh, bass like it when a lure's on the top. They like to eat bugs off the top of the water. I honestly could not figure out anything about this game. Well, I mean, literally, even with a guy that was literally telling me exactly what to do in each step, I felt like I guess this is how my son feels with every game I give him because he's never played a game. He's 5. He doesn't understand half these games. So I'm watching, you watch him on Mario Brothers walk to the edge of the first cliff and fall 75 times until he realizes, oh, I can jump over that cliff. That's what I felt like this whole time. I was like, I'm doing things at a speed that is inexcusably bad. It took me 3 hours to see fish. And then it took me another hour to catch one, or to hook a fish. I never reeled a fish in, because that's the other part. So let's say you get lucky enough, or you know what you're doing, and you get that first fish. And I don't think it was a bass, because it was a smaller shadow than the bigger shadows in there. So I figured that was the goal, is to catch the smaller fish, because I knew there was a leveling system, although I didn't have any way to understand what it was. So I was like, I'll catch the littler fish. I've got to, they seem to be responding to this lure. This is great. I'll catch one of these in. So you start reeling them in, and it's like, the meters change to this fish strength and then a line strength and I guess your strength. And it's 3 different meters that go all over the place and crazy. And then every time after about 10 seconds where you feel like you're getting good, my line snaps every single time. And I don't know. I was watching the meters. It wasn't like it wasn't that the fish's strength was super high and my line strength was super low or anything else. It just seemed random. It was like, oh, no, you think you're going to catch a fish? Go F yourself. Every single time. Like, I got it right to where it was like literally, if I could have pulled it 1 pixel closer to the boat, I'm sure I would have reeled it in. And it was just like, no, that's not happening, sir. And it just broke the line immediately. And that was the last time I tried this game and thought, you know what? If Billy and Jeremy have successfully caught a fish, then they can explain to me what it is I'm doing wrong on the reeling in.
Well, it's all about the tension and your line. You've got those, your meters, and probably once that the tension in the line, if that reaches all the way to the right, your line's going to break, and that's it. Your fish is gone. So you have to sit there and kind of do a back and forth with the fish's strength. Sometimes they will pull the line more, which increases the tension, and you actually have to let off your strength, and the tension will go back down. So the fish is kind of getting away for a minute. You're letting it tire itself out. And so once it kind of slows down, then you can start to reel it back in. It's just a kind of, a fight back and forth with the fish, and just, a kind of a test of patience, really. And if you can sit there and do that over and over again, eventually you'll reel it in. This is kind of the part of the game where I think it's a little bit too over exaggerated. It does not take that much to actually reel in a fish in real life. It's I don't know what this guy is using for line, but it is obviously something around just like a string or something like that, because it is very easy to break your line in that game. And you just kind of have to know as you're kind of lower in levels to really ease off that power meter, and so your tension doesn't go too high. So that's kind of what it is. It's weird. The first time you do it, you're just like, what the hell is going on? These fucking meters are just going back and forth like crazy. The fish is going crazy on screen. It just seems like chaos. But when you realize what's going on and what you need to do, it's not too bad.
I mean, pretty much that's it. Yeah, and I have to admit that it's tedious. It's another thing that as that strength attribute builds up, there's a little less fighting involved. But when you get to some of the bigger fish later on, it's a bit much, and it might be enough to kind of turn you away, especially since you're trying to catch the fish in mass. But yeah, what Jeremy said is perfect, and Jeremy P, I'm sorry that you floundered at that aspect of the game.
Ooh, nicely done. I've played other fishing games, and that's the part that I guess I was the most confused on, is that I've played other fishing games, not much, but when the Dreamcast came out and they had that awesome Dreamcast fishing game that came with a controller that was like motion sensed and all this, I was like, this is great. That was great fun. And I've played every fishing game that's a mini game on another game. I've wasted days of my life, like I said, playing other fishing games that weren't really fishing games. But even like the one in Final Fantasy had that tension, the line tension we talked about. It was a little more involved than World of Warcraft, push a button and wait, but it was still, like, I understood the concepts. This game, I could not wrap my head around it. I was just like, I must be, maybe I'm playing the wrong game. Maybe this is a broken game. Maybe it's just because of the emulation. But no, I think it honestly is just that I am not patient. I am not patient, and I'm not going to take the time to be patient. The same reason I'm not really a good fisherman at all.
And it's like real fishing. It's not an exact science. Like, even when you know what to do in that game, like, things aren't going to work 100% every single time. It's just kind of if you have knowledge on your side, then you have a better chance of actually catching a fish and reeling it in. If you're just going into it blind, especially with no instruction manual or anything like that, I feel bad for you. That it would just be the most frustrating experience.
Yeah, you're not gonna last. It's not gonna. Because you have to. That's the thing. You have to come in with some fishing knowledge or the instructions, or this is a game that I imagine, and Jeremy P seems to back it up, is a nightmare to just sit down, no aid at all, and try to pick up. Way ahead of its time as far as being a sports sim. For this to be the Super Nintendo, like I said before, the whole simulation thing didn't really take off for until a little bit after that.
Now, did you guys play a lot of other fishing games? I mean, compared to other fishing games, is this more or less complex?
I played pretty much any fishing game after that because my uncle forcing us to play it aside. I genuinely liked playing this game. I owned it myself eventually, legally, and I picked up any fishing game that the store had, the video store had, and the Super Nintendo had a handful of fishing titles, and I couldn't find any that I preferred over this one, and I have to say that this one still, even once we're moving on to the PlayStation 1 era, I think Super Black Bass still, as far as kind of accuracy to the real thing, I don't think any of them topped it, really.
I think that was kind of the problem with a lot of fishing games. Like, once you take away the sim aspects, then you are basically left with a mini game that you can fit to any game. So, the Super Black Bass for me, that was my go-to on the Super Nintendo. I rented a few more. And I think there was one I can't remember the name of. That was also pretty fun. But generally, I didn't play another fishing game until the Sega or the Dreamcast. That was. I actually went to the import store by my house that sold import Dreamcast games and PlayStation games at ridiculous prices. And I got that fishing game. It came with the reel, the motion control reel, and the game. And I spent, are you ready for this? $180 on that.
You can't hide money.
It was just one of those things, It was back when I was a kid. I had a job and I liked playing video games. And this seemed crazy. This was back before the whole Wii thing and stuff like that. So the idea that you could hold a fishing rod, it's just a little fake plastic fishing rod, and play a game like that. You're actually casting the lure into the lake. It just seemed amazing to me, and it was. It's hard to justify spending $180 on a video game, but goddamn, I probably spent enough hours playing that to justify that $180.
Yeah, and going back, I think a lot of the fishing games, and that was a good fishing game. That was a solid title. There's nothing wrong with that one at all. I think after Super Black Bass, that is my next in line. A lot of the games were just too easy. They were you were kind of guaranteed a fish if you threw your, if you cast it out amongst them, something was going to bite, and you were going to hit a button and reel it in, pretty much. And that's all right when it's a mini game, like Animal Crossing, for instance. I'll fish on there, have fished on there for an embarrassing amount of time. But yeah, that's a mini game within that game. You don't want that from a actual fishing title. Not a lot of fishing games relied on the physical gimmick to it. Like not enough of them came out with that reel. I remember one that I spent a lot of time on was going back to my love for those little handheld LCD games, was bass fishing.
Oh,
right, that is fishing, no G at the end of it, and it was pretty much a reel with a little display on it. You would cast it out, you'd reel it in slow, and you had your little radar on there. You'd hook one, and you would have to pull back and fucking reel that thing as hard as you can. And yeah, that was a fun one. I popped myself right in the fucking face with that thing several times over when I pulled back to catch a fish. The allure of that game was that there was a lunker. I can't remember if it was a 40 or 50 pounder out there. And there's just one. I guess once you caught it, that was it. I guess you would have to manually reset the game to get it back in there. And it was always a thing around the house who was going to catch that thing first. I eventually did. It's probably part of why I have fucking carpal tunnel in both hands now. but it was well worth it. So yeah, and it's kind of sad that there aren't a lot of fishing games that took advantage of that. Took advantage of of having a physical reel. That Dreamcast one was great. I don't know if it's $180 some great, but yeah.
My uncle's reaction to that game was probably worth $180. I took that over to my aunt's house one I don't know, weekend or something like that when I was staying over there, and I was playing it, and he came in, he caught a glimpse of me in there, and he, that whole family is a big fisherman family, and I don't know if anybody remembers, but the Dreamcast, the graphics on that thing were so ahead of, it was just a huge step up from what we were getting on the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he was used to. Hell, most of the games he was playing were still on the Super Nintendo at the time. So he came in there and he was watching me play, and I said, well, here, this. I handed him the reel. I was like, just go ahead and cast it, and it's a very simple game. It's not a sim game or anything like that. I think it's actually based off the arcade game, or is the arcade game of the same name. And he did it. He just cast out the pole, and it kind of goes into that underwater view, and that fish came up and grabbed it, and he flinched back so hard that he looked like he got shot with a shotgun. He was so shocked. He's like, "This is the realest thing I've ever seen." He's like, "This is just amazing." And he sat there and played that game for like 4 hours straight. He wouldn't even give me the rod back. I just had to go off and do something else. He was just enthralled with that game.
It's like a real life version of those Wii commercials when it first came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The old person forever entertained by this electronic device.
And that was, years before the Wii. So,
yeah.
Just imagine that kind of experience way back in the day. But yeah, that was, that's probably my second favorite fishing game, even though it's definitely, there's not too much to it. Just the entire audio visual experience and just playing with that stupid reel, really, it just holds a special place in my heart.
I think you did hit on a good point as far as why this game is tough. It is a realistic simulation of the steps you'd need to catch a fish, and then the proper way to reel in a fish, and the proper lures you'd need. I guess that I do want that game that's the simple game where you push a button and catch a fish. But I guess when I think about it, when I'm fishing in Final Fantasy 15 or, in Animal Crossing, I did waste an embarrassing amount of time on that. It's not about catching the fish as much as it's, I'm going to take this fish and sell it for a lot of bells. Or in Final Fantasy, I'm going to use this fish and cook it and make a lot of food that helps my stats. Like, there's a bonus to it. But the actual fishing itself is fairly straightforward and simple. But I guess without the payoff of having another function for it, it would seem really pointless. Like, I know are they making like a Final Fantasy 15 VR fishing game?
They are.
They
are Monsters of the Deep or something like that.
Like, it has to have something else unless either a more involved fishing engine or like another tie into the actual game. I don't know what it would do that would keep you playing it.
I heard you can take it back to the mechanic shop and that girl will wash your car.
See, I can see that being an appropriate payoff. Or inappropriate payoff, but one that would be worth playing it for. I can see that. So that must be what it is, but I think I'm still fascinated by this game. I don't know if I'll ever pick it up again just to see if I'll ever learn it, but I like the idea that it's so involved. Like, I like how complex it is, but it was still like they needed a slightly, like a baby lake. Where you could just, it's just like, hey, here's the real basics of this game. Like a real tutorial, maybe that would have helped me more. I know that's how current games are, but this one was just, you're right, without a manual, without a lot of fishing knowledge, without having any real idea of how to play this game. Like even what the buttons do, I couldn't figure out how to change your lures. Like, I was like, this is ridiculous. I appreciate it.
Jeremy P, you know what the listeners want, and I'm going to speak for them. By the time the next episode comes out, they want to know that you have caught a goddamn fish on Super Black Bass.
You know what? I'm going to make that pledge. I will catch one fish on Super Black Bass before I record another episode of the show. So this could be the last episode of Retrovaniacs.
You were talking about like a payoff for, like the other games, you're catching a fish for a certain goal, to get more money or whatever. But like in Super Black Bass, the payoff is actually catching the fish. You feel like you've accomplished something after even just a little fish. You're just like, I have beat this motherfucker. I figured out all the stupid things that this fish wants, and I got him. And that's kind of the payoff for that kind of game. And the best thing I can say about Super Black Bass is that after playing it for an hour or so, it actually makes me want to go fishing. And even though I probably won't ever go fishing again, it definitely just it scratches that itch. It's just like, man, I just want to get out there on that lake and try to catch something. And hell, for a fishing game, I think that's the best thing you can say about it.
Well, that is a good summary of a game that I still won't grip, even though I said I'm going to catch a fish, and I will. But I still will probably never fully understand this game. Here's a game that I think we can all agree, easy to understand, easy to pick up, and a great kind of pseudo-retro release. Sonic Mania is outstanding.
I'm going to tell you, if you would have told me just a couple months ago that there would be a Sonic game that we would talk about on here and speak positively of, you would have been laughed off. But but holy shit, they did it. They made it happen.
I'm shocked. This for a game that Sega didn't even make. This was made by a couple of fans.
Yeah, and for a series that honestly, and nostalgia aside, let's be honest, for a series that had become a joke for the most part, at least in my eyes.
Yeah. For this to come out of nowhere, it is really something.
Well, it's a good. Who did I just lose? Billy?
That was Billy.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going. For a game to come out that's a 2D Sonic that feels like the original Sonics, but not really feel too much like, oh yeah, we really want to be a 2D Sonic, and here's they walked a very fine line, because it is basically a collection of kind of reimaginings of some levels from the original 3 Sonic games, but then also new levels that are in those themes and genres. So it's an interesting blend of old and new that still feels new, but feels like you remember the original Sonics. And that's a real hard line to walk.
Yeah, and I think that, what you said is like this feels like a Sonic game. Now, I don't know if you ever played the mess that was Sonic the Hedgehog 4. That was something that they really tried to bring a classic Sonic into modern times. And it just failed completely because it did not feel like a Sonic game, like a classic Sonic game. It just it just felt like somebody was like saw those original games and had no idea what made them so fun. And it was the feel and the the physics of the character and the stage design and everything. They just missed the point completely. But Sonic Mania, it understands every single aspect of the classic Sonic games, of just how Sonic moves and the stage design and everything is spot on. It really feels like you're playing, maybe the Sonic that should have been on the Sega Saturn that we never got.
Billy's been having some internet problems. Apparently some storms are on his house, so he may not be back this episode. But he didn't end up playing a whole lot of this game. He played enough to say, yeah, it's what he remembers, and that's kind of it. So if he's not back, he'll be back next episode. But every couple episodes I throw out, some kind of embarrassing, gaming truth. Well, I think last time was that I'd never actually played Final Fantasy VI all the way through. I've never beaten a 2D Sonic game. And I actually kind of like some of the 3D Sonic games. I know most people hate the 3D Sonic games, or at least are, they're not as good as the 2D games. I loved Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast.
I do too.
I love Sonic Colors. I think Sonic Colors, except for some boss fights that are infuriating, is actually extremely fun and feels a lot like those old Sonics. Even the parts that are 3D aren't open world roaming 3D.
Mm-hmm.
The first Sonic game I ever beat was the terrible Wii Sonic and the Secret Rings, the one that's the Arabian Nights Sonic.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good at all. But I was determined to finish it. And I did. And I finished Sonic Colors, and right now I'm playing Sonic Lost World. I've never finished a 2D Sonic. I'm going to finish this one. It's real good.
Yes. Yeah. This one's worth it. I mean, you can tell just how much effort they've put into this. Just how good it looks, how good it feels, how good it sounds. Man, that music in this game is just something. It is so good, especially like the remixes. When you get that first stage, it's kind of like just the old school music, like how it used to sound. And then when you hit that second section for that stage, it kind of does like a remix of it. And some of those are so good that I've actually went out and downloaded a few of them to listen on my own. But yeah, just it is worth beating. It's not going to be like a super long game, especially if you know what you're doing in it. But for $20, you can't miss this one. If you like Sonic, God, you need to go get this one. It's just awesome.
Well, it's short, but again, if you think about it as the original Genesis Sonic games, it's long for a Sonic game. I mean, I've been playing it my kids love this game, so I've gotten to play it actually a fair deal. And I'm through probably about 8 sets of levels. Each world is 2 levels. And each level ends with a fairly interesting boss. Like that was one of the things when I've tried to play through the original Sonics, the older ones. Some of the bosses are terrible. They're not awful, but they're just kind of the same thing over and over again, or building on the same ideas. This game, each boss is kind of unique. Each boss has, in some cases, aren't even boss fights technically. One of the levels in this is amazing, but it's early on in the game, so it's not really spoiling anything. You fall into a match of Mean Bean Machine.
Yes,
that's incredible.
I almost fell over backwards when that one came. That was just so out of nowhere. Of
the Genesis Sonic games, that's the only Sonic game I put a whole lot of time into was Mean Bean Machine. I love that game. So yeah, that was a great surprise, and it's not a hard level, but it's neat to see it there, and and it's much like the classic 2D Sonic games. And this is something, I guess, one, as I wasn't a Genesis kid, and two, I was more of a straight Mario Brothers level style. Like, you want to be able to explore the level, and it's, if there's a secret, it's like, oh, this is a very obvious second path. It's a secret. The Sonic games are ones of many, many branching paths. And a lot of the time it's just about finding the easiest way to get to the end. It's not exploring the level necessarily. You can do that. But it's really about just like get from point A to point B. There's many ways to get there. And there are some secret hidden things. But it's not like if you don't explore the level, you can't finish the level. You know what I mean? Like a Mario Brothers game, if there's a lot of hidden stuff, it's to get a lot of extra lives, or it's to get, in some of the later Mario games, like all the coins you need to get all 3 coins. in this game, the only reason to find the secrets is in this game, it's the Chaos Emeralds, which I think most games have that, in there to see the true ending of the game. I don't know, because I wasn't a previous Sonic player too much. I assume you've gotten some of the Chaos Emeralds?
Yes.
Is that taken directly, like this specific Chaos Emerald thing where you have to run as fast as you can through this 3D world while you pick up the blue dots to speed up and the rings to keep your time going? Is that taken directly from one of the other Sonics?
No, that one's kind of the only one of the new things it does in this game. That one, there was one, I forget which Sonic one it was, where you're kind of running through a tunnel that was close to this one, but it's still not the same thing. This game does have the Sonic 2 mini game where you're kind of running on a sphere and collecting the little bubbles that are around that. It does have that in here, but the one where you're actually trying to catch the robot that's got the Chaos Emerald, that's exclusive to this game.
It's very, very frustrating. That's the only part of this game so far that's been incredibly hard, but there are definitely some levels that, I've hit a wall a couple times. There's a pretty great fight that's got several phases against Metal Sonic that's actually really good. Again, we're not doing a full review on Sonic Color. Not Sonic Colors. Try again. We're not doing a full review on Sonic Mania, but I am excited to say that it is the Sonic 2D game I think everyone's been hoping for this whole time.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, it goes without saying, if you're a fan of old Sonic games, this is definitely it. If you're not, if you've never kind of got why people like old Sonic games and, kind of that internet meme that like Sonic games have never been good, first off, you're wrong. But, you're probably not going to enjoy this one because it does bring everything back that those first three games did, for better and worse, right back into, Sonic Mania. So if you're not on board with classic Sonic, this isn't going to be your thing. But if you like us, even kind of half-assed just enjoyed playing Sonic back in the day, even if you weren't like a huge mega Sonic fan, I think you'd still really enjoy this game because it is a great throwback.
Well, another good retro release that's come out, actually, I think before the last episode we posted, but right before, so we didn't have time to talk about it, was the second Mega Man collection that is now out. It has Mega Man 7 through 10, including Jeremy's favorite, Mega Man 8.
The best.
Solid collection. I picked it up. I had beaten 8 when it was new, and I'd never played 7 because it was on Super Nintendo and one of those kind of hard-to-find Super Nintendo games for a while. And I'd beaten 9 and 10. 9 and 10 were the retro releases they put out again on the 360 and the Wii.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Excellent collection. Not that that's a surprise. The Mega Man games are pretty solid, and this one Capcom directly did. But it did make me think we haven't covered a Mega Man game. Because,
we have not.
Between Mega Man 1 through 10, and I actually am not a big fan of the X series, but it still would be like, well, yeah, you fight these bosses in this order. They're all kind of the same. They have a few different things between each one, but they're all the same. But there's a branch off of the series that is different enough that we should talk about it. So the next episode is going to be on Mega Man Legends for the PlayStation. The 3D attempt at Mega Man. It adds in a whole new background for Mega Man. It's bizarre. It's definitely the weird stepbrother of the Mega Man family, but it does have its own charms, in my opinion. We'll see if you guys agree. And that'll be our next episode. But until then, please find us on YouTube at retrovania.net. Follow us on Facebook at retrovania.net. Follow us on Twitter at retrovania.net. And we will see you, hopefully with Billy, in 2 weeks with Mega Man Legends.